Hello, welcome to the Doctors Who podcast. Tonight we're covering Chapter 8 of Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. So in this one, Ender's been promoted again, so now he's part of the Rat Army. Doesn't really get along with the commander of the army, or of this group, but he realizes that the platoon commander that he's going to be under asked for him specifically or had a request for him. He starts to learn some new things, gets to apply some strategies in the game room, and goes back to his Giants drink game as well. So stick around, we'll cover all that and more.
Hello and welcome to the Doctors Who podcast. My name is Chris.
And I'm Chip.
I'm Brian.
And we are discussing Chapter 8 of Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card, and this one is entitled Rat. We've determined before we started recording this does not deal with the animal or the metal band from the 80s.
They weren't metal.
Yeah. Hair metal?
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Yeah.
I'll go with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
You need to speak
Not
up
great.
if you're going to criticize 80s bands.
I'm just not a fan.
Just
I'm not
remember,
either.
just
I'm not
remember
either.
what comes around goes around.
What comes around goes back around.
Yeah, so what do you think, Chip?
A rat?
A rat.
A rat.
No.
The chapter,
The
not
chapter,
the band.
okay.
Yes.
This was a good chapter, and I there's a lot that happens here, but the kind of storyline that I really gravitated to was, so Ender got promoted again, not promoted, transferred, so he got picked up, but it was one where he knew that Bonzo was trying to get rid of him, so he thought, oh, he just found a way to get rid of me. But he meets this unfortunately named character named Dink, Dink Meeker, just, and maybe there's meaning behind the character name or not, but it just, it doesn't sound like a great name. But it's a great character, or he's a great character, because Ender starts to learn a lot from him. So, and this goes back to that age difference. I don't know what the age difference is, but he really makes Ender start to question things that he knows. And you think, Ender's only 6, but it's like, from Dink's point of view, is the bugger situation even real? Or is the IF using this to control the population or control humanity, which is, stuff that we see in our modern day and time where, people fabricate things to control people. So it's just, this whole QAnon stuff.
That doesn't happen.
All right, take a drink. Anyway, that's the subplot that I kind of focused on, because he was, Dink basically confirmed that he chose Ender, to come and be on this team.
Oh, I said
which is a
that
big
last
deal.
time and I was mistaken.
Yeah. Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
I remember that, man.
So anyway, there's a lot of other stuff that happens, so these guys can cover the other stuff.
I-
That stuff again. I don't care.
I think so. So Dink was one of my favorite characters last time I read this chapter as well, just in large part because he is the first person who I recall feeling like they actually belonged at battle school. Like they seemed to he seemed to have a very decent head on his shoulder, and even though he wasn't perfect, and it was pointed out, the numerous flaws in his tactical process, he seemed like he was open-minded. He seemed like he was at least a somewhat competent leader. I mean, up until this point, we've run into Bonzo, we've run into like even in the Launchies class, I mean, they had Eli, but he wasn't really a leader at that point. He was sort of, in name at least, but this was the first guy that I really felt could show something of great significance to Ender. Not the least of which, asking the question, why are children involved in the game of war? He had the great point where shouldn't kids just be kids? And I read this a long time ago, and then now as a father, where it's like, yeah, I would not want my 6-year-old, 8-year-old, 10-year-old, whatever, I would not want my kid to be involved in this. And so just bringing that up just hit me harder this time around because of, a good book will age with you. You'll get to read it again, and you'll have these new revelations. So I appreciate, if nothing else, his character and the levity that he brings in this chapter.
Well, first of all, having a 7-year-old upstairs, hopefully sleeping, I agree with that sentiment that you look at things differently when you have created many humans. And the interesting thing about Dink, I think, believe it or
Does
not,
he
was
stink?
not
No.
intentional. Is that he confessed to Ender that he's like, they offered me commander several times and I didn't take it. I didn't want it. It kind of reminded me of Star Trek Generations when Kirk is talking to Picard. He's like, don't let them promote you. Don't let them do anything that takes you out of this chair. But he's like, and that's where he kind of like launches into this whole, the buggers aren't even real and the IF's controlling the population, stuff like that. He's like, no, you're playing into their hands. They're just manipulating you and using you, and so it does kind of strike a chord, especially what's been happening across the political spectrum in the last 2 years. But to your point, he does have, I think, a good head on his shoulders. He was scouting Ender. He wanted Ender, and holy crap, my hair is getting like 2 feet long right here. Anyway, yeah. But what I wanted to really kind of talk about was how different Rat was from Salamander as far as environment, right? Bonzo kept a clean house. Everybody was in order. Everything was in its place. And like Rat is like, people are lounging all over the place. Nothing's put away. It's dirty. There's no organization. And Dink actually made the comment. He's like, what's the commander's name?
Rose.
Rosen. He wins, but he doesn't really know why he wins, and he's afraid the more he does it, but he doesn't. He's an idiot, basically, right? Because Rosen tries to act all tough, and then Dink's like, no, don't worry about it. Use your desk, even though he told you not to, and I'm going to teach you how to do all this stuff, and you need to keep training with the Launchies.
Yep.
Because that's making you better and it's making them better. And so it's like the first person that he's come across that's actually trying to help him and build him up. Even though I think Graf is kind of like towing that line. He's like, I want to help you, but I also have a job to do.
But I think what makes Dink a very well-rounded character, he knows himself. He knows his strengths. He knows his weaknesses. He knows that there's things he can learn from Ender, and that there's stuff that he can teach Ender. So he, when they go down and he's monitoring kind of the Launchy program, he saw what Ender did, where he realized he could use his feet as a shield, and might freeze his
He implemented
feet,
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So then Dink took that and applied it to their war games, and
the squad didn't care for it until they
realized that it was effective.
Yeah. And then when Ender's still training with the Launchies and like some of the older kids, including Bernard.
Bernard was there,
and I think Bonzo was there too, right?
Yeah.
Bonzo came in. He was one of the older kids that came in and like tried to rough him up, and again, like Ender fucks some people up, but he keeps being put in the position where he has to.
What's interesting too is his conscience comes into play there, because he always dwells back on Peter when he's done something violent or reacted in a way that was with anger. And I think it was the last chapter he talked about the hot anger and cold anger, that you can't do anything with hot anger. It consumes you, but cold anger you can use. And, we do see Ender use that and react, violently or aggressively towards the other kids. And then he has that, conscience of guilt.
So he goes back into the Giant's Drink afterwards, right?
Yes.
And he goes to the castle tower and he looks in the mirror and he sees Peter's face looking back at him. So you kind of get that. That's weighing heavily in his mind. He's like, oh shoot, I'm becoming Peter. But it's interesting that after those older kids kind of like ambush the Launchies when they're in the battle room training, the next he checks and like 4 of them are in the med bay. And the cause is
With
accidental null grav contact or something like that. So he's like, okay, I'm not gonna get in trouble. And then like some of the other commanders come up to him and they're like, hey, keep doing what you're doing. You're doing a good thing. We will make sure you're safe. So it's like he's finally starting to build the trust of not everybody, but the people who matter.
Oh, yeah.
So
the people that recognize what he's able to do.
Yeah. So it feels like, we kind of come off of this where 3 chapters ago, we had kind of that jumping off when they first got to the station and what would this hold. And now he's like, he's started to show people what he's capable
Mhm.
capable of, and he
Mhm.
started to like attract the attention of commanders and people that matter. Yeah, he's made some enemies, but it wouldn't be a good book without conflict,
Oh, yeah.
right? Nobody wants to read a book about somebody who faces no conflict and lives
Right.
happily ever after.
I wouldn't want to read that.
No.
So,
Man.
Yeah.
There's a lot in here. And I think, one thing that I would ask is what do you think about Graf as a character now? I mean, we've been exposed kind
Right.
of secondhand to Graf more and more throughout the book. Just curious, what is your take on him now? Do you think he is a good guy? Do you think he's a bad guy? Do you think he's somewhere in the middle?
He's all about this ultimate goal of defeating the buggers, and he doesn't seem to have a. He cares to a point, but he's willing to work in those dark areas to achieve his goal. So if it's manipulating these kids and turning them, not allowing them to have a childhood and to basically make them these military monsters, he's okay with that if the ultimate end goal is met.
Mhm.
So I think the very first episode on this book, I made the parallel to Halo, the video game series,
Mhm.
and I said that this kind of reminded me. And that's kind of the same thing where in Halo, they would actually like abduct the kids instead of,
Mm-hmm.
they would replace them with clones, and the clones are faulty and they died after a few years due to illnesses or something like that. But they would take these kids and they would run them through these, basically the equivalent of battle school. And then when they got to a certain point, they'd undergo like these genetic augmentations and things like that. And a lot of them died. A lot of them were messed up forever, but some of them made it through. So the method and the impetus kind of rings similar for me. But with Graf, it almost seems like this is a kid where he's actually connected with the kid, and he's
Mhm.
torn. He knows he's still got to do his job, but he's like, "Fuck, I don't want to,
Yeah.
but I have to. I'm gonna mess him up to turn him into what we need him, but I'm gonna feel bad about it."
But then knowing what Dink brought into this chapter too, where he's questioning if the buggers are even real. So you've got Dink on this side, then you've got Graf over here that we got to be ready when we're ready to fight the buggers, and basically and it sounds like the fleet is on its way to wherever the bugger
I was
homeworld
just looking
is,
for that,
because
yeah.
you got a line in there that by the time the fleet is at the bugger homeworld, Ender better be ready. So
Where was that? I don't know.
right towards the end, I bet.
I thought it was.
Ender is 10 times smarter than me.
I thought it was in one of the
They're stronger.
epigraphs, not epitaphs.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But-
If it was carved on a headstone, then it would be an epitaph.
That is true.
Yeah, well,
Unless the tombstone were at the beginning of the chapter, in which case it would be an epigraph epitaph.
epigraph taff?
Yes, that.
Definitely.
What he said.
We made a word. Anyway. Okay, so next time we will be diving into chapter 13. 13's always a lucky
I
number.
think we should start
are.
with 9.
Where did I get 13?
I think we'll
I
end
don't
at
know.
13 because we'll
Holy
do.
smokes.
No, we'll do.
You're right. No,
Yeah.
chapter 9.
Chapter
What
9
the
just
heck
next
should
time.
What the heck?
Unless these
Oh.
next chapters are boring.
I was
Ryan.
looking at the recording time down there,
Oh.
where it says that we've gone 13 minutes and 25 seconds. Chapter 9. Chapter 9 is next time.
For those of
sounds
you that
right.
have stuck with us this long,
Thank you.
chapter 9.
Chapter 9. So please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. If you click that bell notification, you will get notified when we post new content. We also invite you to use the comment section to continue discussions. What did we miss? What did you like? What did you not like? Are there any other observations that you would like to make on this book? We look forward to continuing this journey with you. And until next time,
Alonzi.